Good day. Our lesson for today, the law of demand. The law of demand. Now I'm using the Nearpod online app and I am asking my students to join this lesson. There's a code that they've got to type in. I've joined under my own name, so I'm the only student in this lesson. Okay, let's continue. The objectives for this lesson, the terms demand and law of demand. There are four key terms I want to focus on in this lesson. Demand, law of demand, demand schedule, and ceteris paribus. Okay, our starter activity is where I want my students to find out what they already know about demand. And this is in the form of a matching task. A matching task where they're given images and 9 key concepts related to demand. Now, this is what the teacher's screen will look like. There's a time allocated for this starter activity. The teacher will press the starter button and then the activity will start. And this is what the student will see, the instructions, and in this case, just some images, and there are some terms which they have to match. So let's just try one of them, this one and that one, they match, so that's correct. So that's a starter activity which the students will see that they more or less know common sense about demand. Right, so our first task is an overview of demand, where I'm giving the students a paragraph with some missing words that the students will have to fill in. Okay, so let's just wait. Right, so there's a paragraph which students have to complete. On the teacher's screen, the names of the students that have joined the lessons will appear and the score of each of the students. So if you have a look and see what the answers will look like. Right, so there's the paragraph with the demand definition and an example of demand where students had to just complete those words that were missing. Okay, right, so let's go on to our task number 2. The difference between effective demand, actual demand, and notional or ineffective demand. So here, 3 questions. What's the difference between these two types of demands? Then I want my students to make up a list of 5 goods that they want to buy, and for each of those goods to indicate whether for them it is a notional demand or an effective demand, and then to briefly explain their answers. And this is a website that they could consult in doing this task. So this is what the student will see, the questions again, and then the answers that they'll complete in this space. Okay, again, the teacher will start the activity, the time is allocated, and when the activity finishes, the students can see their answers, or rather, the teacher can see the scores. Right, for task number 3, we're looking at ceteris or ceteris paribus. Ceteris paribus. This is in the form of a newspaper headline. Falling prices, ceteris paribus, may result in an increase in the demand for electric vehicles. And so here we have a diagram of electric vehicles in China from 2016 to projected 2028. This is in millions of vehicle sales. So for the first question, I want my students to identify any 4 factors that may have an effect on the demand for electric vehicles. Now, what the students will find is that there are a number of factors that could affect the demand for electric vehicles. So, question number 2 then would be for them to find out why we need to use this assumption of ceteris paribus. And they will see that because of the complexity in studying economic phenomena, it makes sense to isolate and identify 1 or 2 aspects of a concept and focus on them because there are too many factors that may affect a particular economic phenomenon. Right, we're moving on. So again, the students will be given a time and a space to answer this activity. For the next task, our focus is the law of demand. Now, this diagram illustrates the law of demand. So, simple questions here for the students to answer. 2 elements of this diagram: negative or positive relationship between price and demand. Does the line slope upwards or downwards? And then to explain what this means. Okay, so the students will answer those questions. Then we go on to the next task where we see that there's a negative relationship. There is a negative relationship which the students will have discovered in the previous task, a negative relationship between price and demand. And the 2 reasons for that are the income effect and the substitution effect. The income of consumers, their income, their wages that they earn, and how that their wages are affected by a change in the price of a commodity, whether the price goes up or whether the price goes down. The income that they have, that they earn, their earnings, how that will be affected by a change in price. And the other reason for this negative relationship is the substitution effect. When one product, one good, can be substituted for another good. Okay, when there's a change in the price of one good, it's likely that the a substitute product will be affected by the change in the price of one good. So these are the 2 reasons why there is a negative relationship between pricing and quantity demanded. So this task makes it a little bit clearer. A movement along the demand curve. When the price rises, quantity demanded decreases. Price rises, quantity demanded decreases. That's known as a contraction. And the opposite is also true. When the price decreases, quantity demanded increases. Decrease in price, increase in quantity demanded, movement along the curve, the demand curve, and that's known as an extension. So these 2 diagrams may be students may be able to clearer see the reasoning for the law of demand being a negative relationship between pricing and quantity demanded. Okay, let's go on to our next aspect where I want my students to draw. Again, this is the student view, to draw a graph to show this contraction and this extension of demand. So they've got some tools here that they can use to draw this contraction, movement to the left, or extension, movement to the right of demand. And again, this is what the teacher will see, the starter button and the time allocated for that activity. Right, our task number 7 is a demand schedule. A demand schedule, a table with 2 columns, pricing and quantity. Okay, and the various quantities at respective levels of prices. Okay, in this case, the demand schedule for hot pot meals. So here are a few questions based on this table, which the students will be able to answer on the next slide again. Okay, the time allocated, the teacher will start the activity and the students will answer in this space again. Okay, so that's for students to understand and practice the demand schedule. Okay, so there we are. We've come to the end of this lesson, and in this activity, there's a little game where students compete against each other to answer a set of multiple choice questions. Okay, so let's just wait for the screen to load. Okay, so here we are. So students, um, so here I'm waiting for students to join this game. So since I am the only student in this lesson, on my mobile device, I click the joining button. And so there I've joined this game. Start activity. See, please question the time question. Okay, demand for good increases when the price of a substitute rises. Okay, so there is an answer there. So this is just a list of questions where students compete against each other. Okay, so there we are. I will end this lesson over here. And so this is a activity where we looked at the law of demand, the law of demand in economics. Thank you very much.